The awakening ritual was unlike anything the humans had ever experienced before. They had to lie down in crystal chambers that were connected to the sleeping builders through quantum links that spanned dimensions. As the ritual began, their physical bodies became motionless while their consciousness was pulled into the dream realm of the universe creators. The dream realm was a place where the normal rules of reality did not exist. Thoughts became solid objects, emotions created weather patterns, and memories turned into landscapes that stretched to impossible horizons. The humans found themselves standing in a vast space that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. Everything here responded to their mental state. When Dr. Park Min-soo felt confused, the ground beneath his feet became a maze of twisted pathways. When Lee Dae-yoon felt overwhelmed, the sky above filled with swirling storms of pure mathematics. When Choi Sung-min felt curious, strange creatures began to appear that were made of living questions. Captain Tae-ho tried to maintain his focus and keep his thoughts calm, but it was almost impossible. In a place where thinking the wrong thing could create monsters or tear holes in the fabric of the dream itself, he had to constantly remind himself that they were here to save the universe, not to be amazed by the impossible nature of this realm. The builders appeared slowly at first as distant figures that seemed to be made of pure light and thought they were enormous beings whose minds were so vast that just looking at them made the humans feel dizzy. The builders had been dreaming of the perfect end to existence for millions of years. As the humans approached, the builders grew larger and more defined, until they towered over the tiny human figures like mountains made of consciousness. Their voices, when they spoke, were like the sound of galaxies colliding or stars being born. Who dares disturb the final dream? The builders asked in unison. Their words created ripples in the dream realm that turned into waves of pure sound that washed over the humans. The force of their attention was so intense that it felt like being examined by a microscope made of lightning. Captain Tae-ho stepped forward, drawing on every bit of courage he had ever possessed in his life. He knew that showing fear or weakness in this place could destroy their minds, so he forced himself to stand tall and speak clearly. "We do," he said with as much confidence as he could manage. "We are the ones who accidentally triggered your end times protocol, and we are here to fix our mistake." The builders' minds recoiled in confusion. This was not something they had programmed into their perfect system in their calculations. No one would ever enter paradise unless they were ready to end everything. The concept of accident was completely foreign to their logical thinking. "You speak of concepts that do not exist in our understanding," one of the builders said. "The final dream has begun because the worthy have transcended. All existence will now find peace in the eternal silence." Dr. Park Min-soo stepped forward to help explain the situation. His scientific mind was better equipped to communicate with beings who thought in terms of logic and programming systems. "We are explorers," he said carefully. "We did not know what your paradise was. We just wanted to learn and discover new things. Our species is still young, and we make mistakes, but we also try to fix them when we realize what we have done wrong." The builders' enormous minds tried to process this information, but their perfect logic could not handle the concept of imperfection. They had been dreaming of flawless endings for so long that they had forgotten what it was like to make errors. Engineer Lee Dae-yoon showed them her readings from the dying universe, using her thoughts to create visual displays in the dream realm. The data showed planets breaking apart, stars going out, and entire civilizations dying as the universe management system shut down. "Your end times protocol is killing trillions of innocent beings who are not ready to die," she explained. "Species that have not even developed space travel yet, children who have not lived their lives. Entire worlds full of creatures that still have so much potential." The builders' vast minds began to fracture as they saw the reality of what their perfect system was doing. They had created the end times to prevent suffering, but instead it was causing suffering on a scale that was beyond comprehension. "But the prophecy has begun," they protested in voices that shook the dream realm. "The universal systems are already shutting down. The cascade cannot be stopped once it has started." Biologist Choi Sung-min made a crucial observation that changed everything he had been studying the builders during their conversation, and he realized something important about their nature. "You designed this system millions of years ago," he said, "but you never considered That species might reach paradise by accident. You built your logic on the assumption that everything would be perfect, but the universe is not perfect. It is chaotic and unpredictable. The builders were immortal beings who had transcended physical existence so long ago that they had forgotten what it was like to be imperfect. They had been dreaming of perfect endings for so long that they could not adapt to imperfect situations. You can redesign the system. Sungmin continued. You have the power to create new protocols that account for accidents and mistakes. You can build in safety measures and second chances. The builders' minds were paralyzed by the complexity of the problem. Their perfect logic could not handle the imperfection of the situation. They had been gods for so long that they had forgotten how to be flexible. Linguist Yoon Ji-hai realized that the builders needed help not just with understanding the problem, but with learning how to think differently. After millions of years of rigid perfection, let us help, she offered. We humans are experts at dealing with imperfection. We are good at fixing things that are broken even when we do not fully understand how they work. The builders were amazed by this concept. They had always believed that you needed complete understanding before you could create solutions, but humans had built their entire civilization on the principle of learning through trial and error. You think in ways we never considered, one of the builders said with something that might have been wonder. Your imperfection is not a weakness, it is a different kind of strength. Captain Taeho seized this moment of understanding to press their advantage. We can work together, he said. You have the power and knowledge to fix the universe, and we have the experience of dealing with chaos and uncertainty. The dream realm began to shift and change as the builders started to consider new possibilities. For the first time in millions of years, they began to think about solutions rather than just perfect endings. Their vast minds started to work on the problem of how to stop the end times. But time was running out in the physical universe. Stars were dying faster and planets were breaking apart as the universal management system continued its shutdown sequence. They had to act quickly before there was nothing left to save. The builders began to understand that their perfect system had a fatal flaw. It could not handle the unexpected. They had programmed it to end everything if someone entered paradise early, but they had never considered that someone might enter paradise by mistake. We need to rewrite the fundamental code of reality itself. One of the builders realized this is the most complex reprogramming task ever attempted. We must change the basic rules of existence while those rules are actively collapsing. The humans and builders began to work together, combining human creativity with builder knowledge to find a solution to the universal crisis. It was the most unlikely partnership in the history of existence, but it was the only hope for saving everything. The fate of every living thing in the universe now depended on whether gods and mortals could learn to work together before time ran out. The greatest engineering project in the history of existence was about to begin, and failure meant the death of everything that had ever existed or ever would exist. The universe was dying, but hope was not dead yet. As long as humans and builders could find a way to combine their different kinds of strength to save reality itself. While paradise crumbled around them and the universe died star by star, the humans refused to give up hope. Captain Taeho divided his crew into teams and sent them searching through every corner of the failing paradise world, looking for any clue that might help them understand how to reverse the apocalypse they had accidentally started. The task seemed impossible, but humans had always been good at doing impossible things. When the situation was desperate enough, they had survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters that should have destroyed them completely. Each time they had found a way to keep going when everything seemed hopeless. Biologist Choi Sung-min worked with several of the blessed to explore the deepest parts of the Eternal Garden, where the oldest and most ancient parts of paradise still maintained some of their original power. The trees here were different from the ones in other areas. They were massive beyond belief, with trunks that were hundreds of meters wide and roots that went down into the very core of the world. These trees are not just plants, Sung-min realized as he studied them with his instruments. They are biological computers that store information and memories. Everything that has ever happened in this world is recorded in their cellular structure. The blessed who worked with him explained that these were the memory trees planted by the builders themselves. when they first created paradise. The trees contain the complete history of the universe from its beginning to the prophesied end, including all the knowledge and wisdom that the builders had accumulated over millions of years. Sarashin. Let's zoom in to the largest of the memory trees, a giant whose canopy was so vast that it created its own weather system. The tree was dying like everything else in paradise, but it was fighting the decay with ancient strength that had endured for eons. If we can access the memories stored in this tree, we might be able to understand how the builders created their universe management system. Soon Min explained to his team, the tree remembers everything, and that includes the original programming for the End Times protocol. Meanwhile, Dr. Park Min-soo and linguist Yoon Ji-hai worked together to study the crystal monuments that were scattered throughout the paradise cities. These monuments were covered with builder text that told the story of how the universe had been created and how it was meant to end. The writing was incredibly complex, using symbols that seemed to change meaning depending on how they were viewed and in what order they were read. But slowly, the two humans began to decode the ancient language, and what they found was both amazing and terrifying. Look at this tablet, Ji-hai called out as she pointed to a massive crystal wall that was covered in flowing script. This is the original programming code for the universe-ending protocol. The builders wrote it like a computer program, but instead of controlling a machine, it controls reality itself. The text revealed that the builders had been the first species to achieve true immortality and unlimited power. They had transcended the need for physical bodies and had become beings of pure thought and energy. But instead of using their power for selfish purposes, they had dedicated themselves to maintaining the universe and preparing for its eventual end. They believed that existence was meant to be temporary and that the ultimate goal of all life was to achieve perfect peace and unity. When they calculated that all worthy souls had transcended beyond the need for physical existence, they would activate the End Times protocol and gently shut down the universe. The problem was that their programming was too perfect and too logical. It could not account for accidents or mistakes or the possibility that someone might reach paradise without meaning to trigger the end of everything. Captain Taeho and engineer Lee Dae-yoon made the most important discovery of all when they found the central control room of paradise hidden deep beneath the main city. The room was enormous and filled with crystal computers that pulsed with dying light, but the most shocking discovery was what they found at the center of the room. The builders were not gone. They were still there, sleeping in crystal pods that kept their consciousness alive. While their bodies had long since turned to dust, they are not dead, Dae-yoon whispered in amazement as she studied the readouts from the crystal pods. Their minds are still active, they are dreaming, and their dreams are what power this entire world. They have been asleep for millions of years, waiting for the proper time to wake up and guide the final souls to paradise. The sleeping builders were connected to the universe management system through quantum links that spanned the entire galaxy. Their dreams were what kept reality stable, and their nightmares were what had started the End Times protocol. When the humans arrived, if we can wake them up, Taeho suggested, maybe they can explain how to stop the universal shutdown. They created this system, so they must know how to control it, but waking the builders would be incredibly dangerous. They had been dreaming of perfect peace and order for millions of years, and suddenly disturbing their sleep might drive them insane or make them so angry that they would speed up the destruction of everything. As the teams worked to gather information, the reports from the outside universe became more and more desperate. Earth was in chaos as the breakdown of physical laws caused technology to fail randomly. Natural disasters struck without warning as gravity and electromagnetic forces became unreliable. Entire star systems were going dark as the ancient machines that maintained stellar fusion began to shut down. Civilizations that had existed for millions of years were dying as their worlds became uninhabitable. The breakdown was accelerating, and soon there would be nothing left to save. We are running out of time, Dae-yoon reported as she monitored the universal decay from her instruments. The cascade failure is spreading faster than we anticipated. At this rate, the entire universe will be dead. Within a matter of days, the humans worked frantically to understand the builder technology. But it was so advanced that it was like trying to understand a computer when you had never seen electricity. Their science was based on principles that human physics had not even discovered, yet Dr. Park Min-soo made a breakthrough when he realized that the builder technology was not just advanced, it was fundamentally different from human technology. Instead of using tools to manipulate matter, they used thought to manipulate reality itself. Their entire civilization was based on the power of consciousness, he explained to the others. They learned how to use their minds to directly control the fabric of space and time. That is how they were able to create paradise and maintain the universe. This discovery gave them hope because it meant that the builders' system might be more flexible than they had thought. If consciousness could control reality, then maybe they could find a way to reprogram the end times protocol using the power of thought. But first they had to wake up the builders, and that would require entering their dream realm, where thought became reality and emotions could kill. The humans would have to face beings whose minds were vast beyond comprehension and convince them to save a universe that they had decided should end. Jihai discovered the ritual needed to enter the builder dream realm by translating the most ancient texts in paradise. The ritual was complex and dangerous, requiring the participants to essentially die and be reborn in a realm where the normal rules of existence did not apply. We have to try, Captain Tejo decided as he looked at his crew. They could see the fear in each other's eyes, but they could also see the determination that made humans special in the universe. We cannot let everyone die because of our mistake. The fate of every living thing in the universe now depended on 5 humans who had accidentally triggered the apocalypse. They had to enter the dreams of godlike beings and convince them to save a reality that was already dying. It was the most impossible mission in the history of existence, but humans had always been good at impossible missions, and they were not about to let the universe end without a fight. They had started this crisis with their curiosity and determination, and they were going to end it the same way. Even if it killed them, they were going to try to save everything. The ritual chamber was prepared, and the humans made their final preparations to enter the dream realm of the builders. They did not know if they would survive the experience, but they knew they had to try. The universe was counting on them, and they would not let it down. 3 weeks after the humans had arrived in paradise, the first crack appeared in the perfect world, and it started with something so small that most people would have missed it completely. A single flower in the great garden stopped singing its gentle melody and began to turn gray at the edges. Dr. Park Min-soo was the first to notice the change because he had been studying the singing flowers every day since their arrival. He was documenting their songs and trying to understand how they could produce music from their petals. When one flower suddenly went silent, he knew immediately that something was wrong. The flower that had stopped singing was one of the most beautiful specimens in the garden. It had petals that looked like crystallized rainbow light, and it had been singing a melody that reminded him of his childhood home. But now its petals were fading to a dull gray color, and its song had been replaced by an eerie silence. Something is happening to the ecosystem, Captain, he reported to Tejo as he examined the dying flower with his instruments. The cellular structure is breaking down, but not in any way that makes scientific sense. It's as if the very life force that powers this world is being drained away within hours more. Flowers began to stop singing and turn gray. The change spread like a disease through the garden, moving from plant to plant in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. The crystal trees began to lose their sparkle and their wind chime leaves fell silent. The crystal rivers that had flowed upward into the sky began to slow and change direction. Instead of flowing up toward the clouds, they started flowing backward down toward the ground. The liquid starlight that had made the water glow began to dim and fade until the rivers looked like ordinary water. Lee Dayun worked frantically at her portable equipment, trying to understand what was causing the breakdown of paradise. Her instruments were detecting massive energy fluctuations throughout the world. The power source that had made everything perfect was becoming unstable. The energy readings are off the charts, she reported to the rest of the team. The whole world is powered by some kind of exotic energy field, but that field is starting to collapse. It's like someone is draining the battery that powers reality itself. The native Blessed began to show signs of panic for the first time since the humans had arrived. Their perfect calm was shattered as they watched their eternal paradise begin to crumble around them. They had never experienced fear or worry before, and they did not know how to handle these new emotions. Arashin found the humans with tears of liquid light streaming down their glowing face. The sight of the blessed leader crying was heartbreaking because it was clear that they had never felt sadness before. The tears left trails of silver light on their cheeks that sparkled like fallen stars. The prophecy is coming true, Arashin whispered in a voice that shook. With fear, the end times have begun. The ancient writings told us that when beings enter paradise before the great judgment, the universe itself begins to die. Captain Teho felt his heart sink as he realized the implications of what Arashin was saying. You mean our being here is causing this breakdown? We triggered some kind of doomsday scenario just by entering your world. The builders created this realm to be the final resting place for all worthy souls when the universe reached its natural end. Arashin explained the gates were sealed until the proper time came. But the ancient systems that control reality were programmed to recognize when someone entered paradise early as a sign that the end should begin across the galaxy far from the paradise world. Ancient warning systems that had been dormant for millions of years suddenly came to life. The builders had created a network of reality, stabilizing machines that kept the universe running smoothly. These machines were scattered throughout every galaxy, maintaining the laws of physics and keeping existence stable when the humans entered paradise before the ordained time. These machines interpreted their presence as a signal that the universe was ready to end. The builders had programmed them with simple logic: if someone reaches paradise early, then all worthy souls must have already transcended, and it is time for everything to end. The machines began their shutdown sequence slowly at first, but with gathering momentum. Stars that had burned steadily for billions of years began to flicker, and dim planets that had orbited their suns in perfect harmony for eons suddenly began to drift from their path. Space itself began to develop cracks and tears as the fundamental forces that held reality together started to weaken. The laws of physics became unreliable. In some regions of the galaxy, gravity would suddenly reverse, while in others time would flow backward. On inhabited worlds across the galaxy, people looked up at the sky and saw their stars going out one by one. Civilizations that had existed for millions of years found their technology failing as the basic rules of the universe changed without warning. Dr. Park Minsu received emergency communications from their ship, which was still in orbit around the paradise world. The messages were fragmentary and broken, but the meaning was clear. Earth and every other world in the galaxy was experiencing catastrophic failures. The reports coming in are impossible, he said as he tried to make sense of the data. Physics is breaking down everywhere. Stars are dying randomly, planets are splitting apart for no reason. The very fabric of space-time is unraveling. Li Daeun worked desperately to understand the scope of the disaster her instruments were detecting. The energy signatures she was reading suggested that the breakdown was not limited to their local area, but was spreading throughout the entire universe. This is not just happening here, she reported. With growing horror, the collapse is universal. Every star, every planet, every living thing in the galaxy is affected. The machines that maintain reality are shutting down everywhere. At once, Choi Sung-min studied the reports from other worlds and found that the breakdown was following a specific pattern. The most advanced civilizations were being affected first, as if the universe was systematically shutting down from the most complex systems to the simplest. It's like someone is turning off the universe one piece at a time, he observed. The pattern suggests that there is some kind of central control system that is methodically ending everything in an organized way. Yoon Ji-hai worked with Arashin to translate more of the ancient builder texts that were carved into the crystal monuments throughout paradise. What they discovered was even more terrifying than they had imagined. The builders did not just create this paradise world, she reported, they created the entire universe management system. They were the first intelligent species to evolve, and they took it upon themselves to maintain reality itself. Captain Teho realized the full scope of what they had done by entering paradise. We have not just started the end of our world, or even our galaxy, we have triggered the end of the entire universe. Every living thing that exists is going to die because we made one simple mistake. The paradise world continued to decay around them. The cities of light began to flicker and fade. The magical creatures that had flown through the sparkling air fell to the ground as their life force drained away. The very ground beneath their feet began to crack and crumble. "We need to find a way to stop this," Captain Tejo announced to his crew as they watched paradise die around them. "We started this apocalypse and we are going to find a way to end it. Even if it seems impossible, we cannot give up when every living thing in the universe depends on us. The humans had accidentally become the most important people in the history of existence. They had the power to end everything, and somehow they had to find the power to save everything. The greatest challenge in human history was just beginning, and failure meant the death of every star, every world, and every dream that had ever existed. Time was running out and the universe was dying. But humanity had never backed down from an impossible challenge before. They would find a way to fix their mistake or die trying, because that was what humans did when everything seemed hopeless. They found hope where none existed and fought for it with everything they had. The moment Captain Kim Tae-ho and his crew stepped out of their ship onto the surface of the paradise world, they knew they had entered something beyond human understanding. The grass beneath their feet felt like the softest silk and seemed to glow with its own gentle light. Each blade was perfect, and when they walked across it, their footsteps made no sound at all. The air itself was different from anything they had ever breathed. It tasted sweet, like honey mixed with fresh mountain air. And with each breath they took, they felt stronger and more alive than ever before. The atmosphere seemed to fill their lungs with pure energy that spread through their bodies, making them feel as if they could run for hours without getting tired. Dr. Park Min-soo knelt down and touched one of the strange flowers that grew everywhere around them. The flower was unlike anything in their botanical databases. It had petals that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight, and when he touched it gently, the flower began to sing a soft melody that sounded like a lullaby his mother had sung to him as a child. "This is impossible," he whispered as he listened to the flower sing. "The sound waves are coming from the petals themselves, but there is no mechanism that could produce music. They are somehow converting light into sound in a way that our science cannot explain." Lee Dae-yoon walked over to one of the crystal trees that grew throughout the paradise landscape. The tree was tall and graceful, with bark that looked like polished diamond and leaves that tinkled like wind chimes when the breeze moved through them. She reached up and picked one of the fruits that hung from its branches. The fruit was shaped like a small star and glowed with warm golden light. When she bit into it, the taste was indescribable. It was like eating her happiest memory. The flavor changed to match whatever brought her the most joy. She could taste her grandmother's cooking and the first kiss she had shared with her husband, and the pride she felt when she graduated from engineering school. "Captain, this fruit, it heals everything," she called out in amazement as she watched a small cut on her hand disappear completely. "I had this scar from when I was a child, and it's gone. The fruit does not just taste good, it actually repairs your body at the cellular level." Choi Sung-min, the biologist, was in paradise of his own as he studied the incredible creatures that lived in this world. He watched in wonder as a butterfly, the size of his hand, landed on his shoulder. The butterfly had wings that seemed to be made of pure rainbow light, and everywhere it flew it left tiny sparkles in the air that danced and swirled before fading away. The butterfly was not the only amazing creature in this world. Birds that looked like they were made of living music flew overhead, their songs creating visible notes that hung in the air like musical notation. Fish swam through the crystal rivers, but these fish had scales that looked like mirrors, and they seemed to swim through the water as easily as flying through air. Small animals that looked like rabbits, but with fur that changed colors to match their emotions, hopped through the grass. They were curious about the humans and came close to investigate, but they showed no fear at all. In this world, nothing seemed to be afraid of anything else because there was no danger or violence. The native beings of this world approached the humans with joy and wonder. These creatures called themselves the Blessed, and they were tall and graceful with skin that glowed softly like moonlight. Their eyes were large and kind and seemed to contain the light of stars. Their hair moved as if it were underwater, even though there was no wind. The leader of the Blessed was a being named Erishin, who spoke to the humans in perfect Korean, somehow knowing their language without ever having heard it before. Erishin's voice was like music itself, each word flowing into the next like A song that never ended welcomed travelers from the outer darkness. Erishin said with a smile that seemed to light up the world around them. You have come to the eternal garden where all beings live in perfect peace and harmony. Here you will never know hunger or pain or sadness ever again. Yun Jihai, the linguist, was amazed by how easily she could understand Erishin, even though the being was clearly not human. How do you know our language? She asked. How is it possible for you to speak to us in words we understand when you have never met humans before? The builders made this place to be paradise for all worthy souls who would eventually come here. Erishin explained their great wisdom allowed them to create a realm where all beings could communicate regardless of their origin. When beings enter the eternal garden, they become part of the eternal peace that exists here. The humans spent their first days exploring this incredible world, and each discovery was more amazing than the last. They swam in lakes that were made of liquid starlight that felt warm against their skin and filled them with energy. They walked through forests where every tree was perfect and every flower sang its own unique song. They visited the cities of light, where the blessed lived, and found buildings that were made of crystallized music and solidified dreams. The architecture was beyond human understanding, with structures that seemed to float in the air and rooms that were bigger inside than they appeared from the outside. The blessed showed them fountains that flowed with water that could grant any wish, in gardens where the plants grew in patterns that told stories of ancient times and distant worlds. Everything in this realm was designed to bring joy and wonder to those who experienced it. At night, the humans slept on beds made of clouds that sang gentle lullabies and cradled them like a mother's arms. They dreamed dreams that were more vivid and beautiful than any they had ever experienced, and they woke each morning feeling more refreshed than they had ever felt in their lives. The food in this world was beyond anything they had ever tasted. Each meal was perfectly suited to their individual desires, and every bite filled them with satisfaction and happiness. They never felt hungry or thirsty because the very air seemed to nourish them. But as the days passed, Captain Tejo began to notice something that bothered him. The blessed seemed almost too peaceful, as if they were sleepwalking through their perfect lives. They smiled constantly and spoke in gentle voices, but there was something missing in their eyes, a spark that seemed to have gone out long ago. During quiet moments when he thought no one was watching, he would look toward the horizon, and sometimes he could swear he saw dark storm clouds gathering in the distance. But when he looked again, the sky was always clear and perfect, with no sign of any weather that might disturb the eternal peace. The other humans were so enchanted by the wonders of paradise that they did not notice these small signs of trouble. They spent their days exploring and marveling at each new discovery. Dr. Park Min-soo studied the impossible plants, while Lee Dayun tried to understand the technology that powered this world. Choi Seung-min documented the amazing creatures, while Yoon Ji-hai worked to learn more about the blessed and their culture. Everyone was happy and content in this perfect world, but Captain Tejo could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. He had been an explorer long enough to know that nothing in the universe was ever truly perfect. There was always a price to pay for paradise, and he wondered what that price might be. He did not know that his concerns were justified, and that the dark clouds on the horizon were the first signs of the apocalypse that their arrival had accidentally triggered. The universe itself had begun to notice that someone was in paradise before the proper time, and ancient systems were slowly waking up to begin the process of ending everything the humans had found their paradise. But they had also doomed every living thing in the galaxy to extinction. Captain Kim Tae-ho floated in the command center of his ship, staring at something that should not exist. The massive crystal gates hung in empty space like a dream made real. Each gate was taller than a skyscraper and wider than a football field. They were made of what looked like living diamond that pulsed with soft rainbow colors that moved and danced across their surface. The gates were beautiful beyond anything humans had ever seen before. They seemed to breathe with their own life, and the light they gave off made the darkness of space feel warm and welcoming. Instead of the cold emptiness that surrounded most things in the void, these gates felt alive and full of purpose. Dr. Park Min-soo pressed his face against the viewing window, his breath fogging the glass as he stared at the incredible sight before them. He had been studying space anomalies for 20 years, but nothing had prepared him for this discovery. His instruments were going crazy with readings he had never seen. Before the energy coming from those gates is impossible, he whispered to himself as he checked his readings for the 100th time. This much power could light up our entire solar system for 1,000,000 years, whatever built this was so far ahead of us that we might as well be cave dwellers looking at a spaceship. Lee Dae-Yoon worked at her engineering station trying to make sense of what her sensors were telling her. The gates were not just floating in space randomly, they were positioned at the exact center of what appeared to be a massive energy field that stretched for light years in every direction. The field was so subtle that their instruments could barely detect it. But it was definitely there, Captain. These gates are not just decoration, she called out to Tae-ho. They are some kind of portal or doorway. The energy signatures suggest they lead somewhere else entirely. Not just to another place, but maybe to another dimension or reality altogether. The ship had been traveling through this sector of space for 3 months, following strange energy signals that their deep space scanners had detected from Earth. The signals were unlike anything in their databases. They pulsed in patterns that seemed almost like music or language, but no computer could decode what they meant. Choi Sung-min, the ship's biologist, had been the first to suggest that the signals might be artificial rather than natural phenomena. He had studied the patterns for weeks and became convinced that they showed too much organization to be random cosmic events. Something intelligent had created these signals and was broadcasting them across the galaxy. Through the transparent walls of the gates, the crew could see glimpses of what lay beyond, and it took their breath away. The world on the other side looked like paradise itself. Green forests stretched as far as the eye could see, but these were not ordinary trees. They seemed to glow with their own inner light, and their leaves sparkled like emeralds, and sunlight. Crystal rivers flowed through the landscape, but instead of flowing downhill like normal water, these rivers flowed upward into the sky, creating waterfalls that fell from the clouds back down to the earth. The water itself seemed to be made of liquid starlight that glowed and shimmered as it moved. Cities of pure light dotted the landscape like jewels scattered across green velvet. These were not cities built of stone or metal, but structures that seemed to be made of solidified light itself. They rose into the sky like spires of captured rainbow, reaching toward the heavens with architecture that defied human understanding. Strange creatures flew through the air between the cities and forests. These beings looked like the angels from old religious paintings, but they were real and alive. They had wings that seemed to be made of pure energy, and they moved through the air with grace that made human flight look clumsy and awkward. The air itself on the other side of the gate sparkled with what could only be described as magic. Tiny points of light danced and swirled in patterns that hurt to look at directly, but filled the viewer with a sense of wonder and peace. It was as if the very atmosphere was alive and conscious. Yoon Ji-hai, the team's linguist, studied the strange symbols that were carved into the frame of the gates. The symbols seemed to shift and change as she watched them, making it difficult to focus on any single marking for very long. The writing was unlike anything in human history, but something about it felt familiar, as if it was trying to communicate directly with her mind. Captain Tae-ho had been a space explorer for 15 years and had seen many wonders during his travels. He had walked on worlds where the ground was made of diamond and sailed through nebulae where new stars were being born, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of these gates and the paradise world beyond them. This could change everything for humanity, he said to his crew as they gathered around the viewing windows. We could be looking at the greatest discovery in human history. This could be proof that we are not alone in the universe, and that there are civilizations out there that make our greatest achievements look like finger paintings. But something nagged at the back of his mind as he stared at the gates. They were too perfect, too beautiful, and too conveniently placed. It was as if they had been waiting here for someone to find them. The energy signals that had led them here had been broadcasting for who knew how long, calling out across the galaxy like a beacon. What the humans did not know was that these were the sacred gates of Elysium, built by an ancient race that called themselves the Builders. The Builders had been the first intelligent species to evolve in the galaxy, and they had reached a level of technology and understanding that made them almost like gods. The paradise world beyond the gates was called the Eternal Garden, and it had been created as the final resting place for worthy souls when the universe reached its natural end. The builders had designed it to be perfect in every way, a place where suffering and death could not exist, and where every being could find eternal peace and happiness. The gates had been sealed for millions of years, waiting for the prophesied end times to begin according to the builders' calculations. The universe would eventually reach a point where all worthy souls had transcended beyond the need for physical existence. At that point, the gates would open and these souls would enter paradise to wait for the final end of all things. The builders had programmed their great machines with one simple rule that seemed logical to their perfect minds. If someone entered paradise before the proper time, it meant that all worthy souls had already transcended and the universe was ready to end. Therefore, the machines would begin the process of shutting down reality itself as Captain Tejo made the decision that would change everything. He looked at his crew and saw the same excitement and wonder in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They were explorers, and this was what they lived for, the chance to discover something new and amazing. "We have to go through," he announced to his crew. "This could be the greatest adventure in human history. We cannot turn back now when we are so close to answers about what lies beyond our small corner of the universe." The crew agreed immediately. They had traveled too far and seen too much to turn back now. Without knowing what they were about to unleash upon the galaxy, they prepared their ship to pass through the sacred gates of Elysium and enter a world that was never meant for them. As their ship approached the crystal barriers, alarms began sounding on worlds across the galaxy. Ancient computers that had been dormant for millions of years suddenly came to life and began counting down to the end of everything. The builders had built their system too well, and now it would bring about the very apocalypse it was designed to prevent. Humans were about to learn that sometimes the greatest discoveries come with the greatest dangers, and that paradise itself might be the most dangerous place in the universe. Working together in the dream realm, humans and builders began the most complex engineering project in the history of existence. They had to rewrite the fundamental code of reality itself, while that reality was actively collapsing around them. It was like trying to repair a spaceship while it was exploding in the vacuum of space. The builders, with their vast minds and perfect logic, were paralyzed by the scope of the problem. They had been thinking in terms of flawless systems for so long that they could not adapt to the chaos and uncertainty of the current crisis. Their programming was too rigid to handle the unexpected, but humans had spent their entire evolutionary history dealing with imperfection and chaos. They had learned to survive by being flexible and creative and by finding solutions that worked even when they did not fully understand the problem. Let U.S. help, Captain Tejo said as he watched the builders struggle with concepts that were foreign to their perfect minds. "We may not understand your technology, but we are very good at fixing things that are broken." Engineer Lee Dae-yoon stepped forward with practical experience that proved invaluable in this crisis. Instead of trying to create a perfect system, why not build in safeguards and exceptions? She suggested. If someone enters paradise accidentally, just send them back and reset the countdown. The builders were amazed by this simple solution. They had been so focused on creating perfect endings that they had never considered the possibility of second chances or do-overs. The concept of a reset button was revolutionary too. Beings who had programmed everything to happen only once. Park Min-soo worked with the builders to understand the quantum mechanics of the universe management system. He discovered that the ancient machines were not just maintaining physical laws, but were actually creating reality. Moment by moment, through conscious observation, the universe exists because you are dreaming it into existence. He realized the end times protocol is not just shutting down machines, it is making you stop dreaming reality into being. This discovery opened up new possibilities for solving the crisis. If the builders could change their dreams, they could change the fundamental nature of reality itself. They did not need to reprogram machines, they needed to reprogram their own consciousness. Biologist Choi Sung-min made another crucial observation about the nature of the crisis. The builders had been dreaming of perfect endings for so long that they had forgotten how to dream of new beginnings. Their consciousness was stuck in a loop of termination and finality. You need to learn how to dream of possibilities again, he explained. To the vast minds of the builders, instead of dreaming about endings, try dreaming about what could happen next. Linguist Yoon Ji Hai helped translate human concepts into the mathematical language that the builders used for their deepest thoughts. She found ways to express ideas like hope and curiosity and determination in the quantum equations that governed reality. The builders began to understand that their perfect system had been missing something essential. It had no room for growth or change or the unexpected joy of discovery. They had been so focused on creating a perfect ending that they had forgotten why existence was worth preserving. You have shown us that imperfection can be beautiful, one of the builders said to the humans. Perhaps our paradise was too perfect, too static. You have taught us that growth and change have value too. As they worked together to reprogram reality, the humans and builders created something entirely new, a universe management system that could handle accidents and mistakes and unexpected events. They built in flexibility and room for error and the possibility of second chances. The new system would monitor reality, but instead of shutting everything down when something unexpected happened, it would adapt and learn and find new ways to maintain stability. It would be a living system that could grow and change along with the universe itself. But there was still the problem of the current crisis. The end times protocol was still running and the universe was still dying. They needed to stop the immediate collapse while they implemented the new system. Captain Teho made a difficult decision that showed the essence of human nature. We need to leave paradise, he announced to his crew. As long as we are here, the old system will continue to see our presence as a sign that the end times should continue. The blessed, who had grown to love the humans during their time in paradise, were sad to see them go, but they understood the necessity. Erishin spoke for all of them when they said, you have taught us that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go. The humans prepared to return to their ship, but as they reached the crystal gates, the builders made an unexpected offer that changed everything. You have saved the universe through your humanity, the builders said. We would be honored if you would serve as guardians of these gates, not to keep others out, but to help them understand what they are. Entering, the humans accepted this role, becoming the first gatekeepers of paradise. They would ensure that future visitors understood the responsibility that came with entering such a sacred place. They would be teachers and guides, helping other species learn from humanity's mistakes. As the new universe management system came online, the humans watched in amazement as reality began to heal.